The key age at which you can access your super in the form of a pension is your preservation age, and it's based on your date of birth. So if you check out your date of birth, you can work out what your preservation age is, and therefore that is the age at which you can access your superannuation money. For those of you who have a pension account higher than $1.6 million, on the 1st of July you'll need to actually roll back the balance over 1.6 million to the accumulation phase, or withdraw it fully from superannuation. Now, often people think that, well, I'm nowhere near that limit, but some people have what we call defined benefit pensions, and that's where they're often the Commonwealth Super Scheme or the Public Service Super Scheme, where they get a regular income that's indexed up each year, and they're actually being given a capital value under this limit of 16 times the annual amount. So if someone's receiving a defined benefit pension of $60,000, for example, then 16 times that is $960,000. So that $916,000 is added towards the $1.6 million pension superannuation limit. So if that individual has got an account-based pension as well, like a Christian pension, of $700,000, their total balance will be $1.66 million. That's $60,000 over the threshold, and they would either need to roll back to the accumulation phase or withdraw from super altogether $60,000 of that account-based pension, because you can't withdraw any funds from the defined benefit pension. So just to highlight that for those people that do have defined benefit pensions. Or the other change that's occurring is that transition to retirement pensions, so they're pensions that you've started once you've reached a preservation age, but you have not satisfied a condition of release. Currently, those pensions are tax-free. They pay no tax on the earnings within the fund. So if you've got $100,000 in your account and it earns $5,000, then it's taxed at 15% or $750. So they're going to change that to be taxed like a normal superannuation accumulation account at 15%. So you need to decide, if you're in this phase, whether you're going to actually retain your pension in that transition to retirement pension. But just to give you a quick summary of how that works, and this is for people that are either in a transition to retirement sort of strategy or considering it, this is how it works. So once you've reached the preservation age that we've talked about earlier, and you might have a super balance, let's say, of $200,000 in the accumulation phase, that's where you're putting money into super, you're not drawing money out of it. You can leave the minimum balance in your account of $5,000 and then roll over the remaining amount to the pension account. So now you have two accounts, and someone asked, how do you do that? And it's simply completing a form. So you complete a form, get the product disclosure statement, either for, call up and get the physical copy, or you get it from the Christian Super website. Complete the form, and you can start a new account, a pension account, and leave a small amount in your existing account so that you can continue to put money into it, your employer contributions into it, and you can roll over the rest to pension phase. Now, accumulation accounts are currently taxed so they both have investment growth, so they've got the same types of investment options. They both should grow in terms of their longer term value, but the accumulation account is taxed at 15%. So if it was a $5,000 account earning 5%, there would be only about $40 in tax on that, because it's a small amount on the $5,000 in the account. Whereas in the pension account currently, there's no tax, regardless of what sort of account it is. But that's going to change from the 1st of July. Transition to retirement pensions are going to be taxed at 15%. So if you've got $195,000 in it and it's earning 5%, there might be $1,400 or $1,500 of additional tax that you'll pay from the 1st of July. So you need to decide, are you going to maintain the pension, or will you roll it back to your accumulation account? Do you roll it back to this account? Now that will largely depend on whether you've satisfied a condition of release or not. So if you've reached a preservation age, you can start a pension. Depending on whether you've satisfied a condition of release or not determines on what type of pension you can commence. So if you're under 60 years of age and you have ceased gainful employment, and you declare at that point in time that you never are going to go back to gainful employment, and gainful employment is working 10 hours a week or more. So if you have satisfied that, you're under 60, you've ceased employment, and you say that you're not going to work more than 10 hours a week into the future, then you've satisfied a condition of release, and you can commence what we call an account-based pension. So you could change your transition to retirement pension to a account-based pension, and then the earnings can be tax-free from that point in time. Another condition of release is if you're 60 years of age and you've ceased a form of employment. So you might have two jobs, you've ceased one, you're over 60, and that satisfies a condition of release and achieves the same outcome. So rather than being taxed at 15% from the 1st of July, you'll maintain your tax-free status. And then there's a catch-all at 65 years of age. When you turn 65, it satisfies a condition of release, and again, you can maintain that tax-free status in your pension, your Christian pension. So you need to firstly understand what type of pension you have, or if you've reached a preservation age, what type of pension you could start. So is yours a transition to retirement pension where you've not satisfied a condition of release, or is it an account-based pension where you have satisfied a condition of release? So if you've not satisfied a condition of release from the 1st of July, the earnings within the account are going to be taxed at 15%. And you need to decide whether you maintain that account or whether you roll it back to pension phase, roll it back to the accumulation phase, or leave it as is. Now, the key factor really, from our perspective, is whether you need the cash flow. If you've got a transition to retirement strategy in place and you need the cash flow to maintain the tax savings of the salary sacrifice strategy, then you might keep it in place just because you need the cash flow from it. You can, if you're over 60, you can draw the funds from the account still tax-free, even though the earnings within the account are not tax-free. So if you need the cash flow, you might leave the transition to retirement pension in place. Another reason why you might maintain the transition to retirement pension is that if you've made one of these non-concessional contributions, put say $540,000 into the account and then roll it to pension phase, being in pension phase keeps those tax-free components. So that's one other reason why you would maintain the pension account, even though it's taxed the same, the earnings are taxed the same as an accumulation account. And then finally, you may need to also consider, not if you're a Christian super member because it's a pooled investments, but if you've got your own super account or you've got an account where your own specific investments within it, you also need to consider CGT relief as well, because you may be able to clear some of your tax liability within the pension if you're in a fund other than Christian super. If you're in your self-managed super fund or another type of fund where you own your discrete investments within your account, and you might be able to save some capital gains tax by claiming the CGT relief that is part of that new legislation. So you need to consider whether or not to start, stop, roll back or reboot your transition to retirement pension. But if you already have an account-based pension, that means you've satisfied a condition of release, you've already receiving zero tax-free earnings, then you can potentially just maintain it if your balance isn't over that $1.6 million threshold. But you might want to consider or not whether you would reboot it or not if you have gone back to work or continued to work. You might not reboot it because then part of it would be taxable, part of it wouldn't. So just trying to explain that decision as well. The decision to roll back does not really need to occur until closer to the 1st of July, or you can go a bit later than that as well. You can just leave it in place and your transition to retirement pension will just start to be taxed on it rather than being tax-free.